In this video, we're going to look at univariate diagrams, and we're going to use it to answer questions such as who took part in sugar-free Feb, how motivated were they, how much did they reduce their sugar intake. Firstly, what do we mean by univariate? Univariate means only looking at one variable in isolation, so we're not talking about how two variables are related to each other. We're going to look at a number of univariate diagrams that will be appropriate depending on the type of variable we have. Now, it's worth mentioning now that these diagrams could be adapted to show more than one variable, but we'll come to that later. We'll begin by looking at the simple pie chart. Pie charts are most appropriate for qualitative data, and I prefer to use them for nominal data. That's things that don't have a natural order. Let's go with gender. Go back to the pivot table that we created earlier. Now, we want to be left with just gender in the rows box and count of title in the values box and nothing else. If you have something in the columns box, just drag it and drop it elsewhere and it'll disappear. If you've got percentages here, turn these back into absolute counts like I have here. Now to do that, if you right click on them, show values as, and make sure that it says no calculation there, so we just have our totals. What we're left with is a simple summary of the gender of those who took part in sugar-free Feb. Now we can copy this data by selecting it, Control and C, and paste it in a new tab. So open up a new tab, I'm going to zoom in. Now when you paste it into the new tab, what you need to do is right click and click on values and paste it just as values. If you do a normal paste using Control and V, it pastes the entire pivot table, and so you've now got a second pivot table in your Excel file, and that's going to start to slow things down when you've got a few. So I'm going to undo that. Every time you want to paste from a pivot table, you're generally going to want to paste as values like this. Now let's give our tab a sensible name. We right click, rename, call this one gender. Now while we're at it, we're going to keep this data tab right at the beginning. So if you drag that to the front, that's the one that we're going to go back to most, that one and pivot table anyway. So let's keep it tidy, keep that there. Going back to the gender tab, we're now going to create a pie chart from these values. If we select the values that we want in our pie chart, click on Insert, Recommended Charts, and you can see already that Excel is recommending that we might want to use a pie chart for this data. Click on it, click OK, and there we are, we have our pie charts. At the moment it doesn't have any labels on, and we might want to add those. If you hover over this plus sign here, click on data labels, we've got these numbers in here. It tells us how many from each gender have taken part. We might also, rather than having a key, want labels in the actual pie sectors themselves. Now we can do that by double clicking on the data, and we can click on category name and we get category name in there. You can also customize the pie chart in other ways, but I'll let you play with that yourself. Great. Have a go at exercises 1 and 2. Check your answers using the answers in the student pack, and then come back to the video. Next, we're going to create a stacked bar chart to show people's motivation level. Go back to your pivot table. Remove gender from the rows by dropping it out, and drag motivation level into the rows. Similarly to the gender, it's just given us a total of how many people have each of these motivation levels. Copy the data into a new tab using Control and C, and as before, when we paste it, we're going to right click, just paste the values. Now, if we select the data that we want in our stacked bar chart, go to Insert, Recommended Charts. Now this time it's not actually suggesting a stacked bar chart, so we're going to have to go to All Charts and select the stacked bar chart there. Okay. Now because motivation level is on a scale, i.e. it's ordinal, we might want to reflect that using the colours in our stacked bar chart. At the moment we've just got a load of random colours that Excel's chosen. If we go to change colours up here, can see that we can turn it into a single color scale like that. Now I actually want a darker color to show more motivated people, so if we scroll down a bit, we get that option here. Now straight away we can see from this chart that the most commonly chosen motivation level was 3, But if we look at the block of 4 and 5, we can see that it's bigger than the block of 1 and 2, meaning that people tended to be more motivated than less motivated. That's promising. Have a go at exercise 3 and then return to the video. We're now going to look at a box plot, one of the most powerful diagrams for showing quantitative data. Unfortunately, Excel doesn't do box plots, but there are some useful websites that do. Open up a web browser, search for Plotly Create, and open up the top results. Plotly is a website that offers quite a lot of graphing features, and this is the free tool within it. Now, if we change the chart type here to Boxplot, if we go and fetch our data from our sheet, if we head to our Data tab, we're going to select the entire sugar reduction column here by clicking on it, Control and C, and it's copied. Head back to Plotly. We can paste it in this Data tab here with Control and V. We then need to tell Plotly where our data is, so we want to use the values that are in column A in our grid. And there we have our box plot. Let's take a minute to interpret this. Boxplot shows us the minimum amount that anybody reduced their sugar intake by. It was minus 96 grams. Shows us the maximum amount that somebody reduced their intake by, 2,683 grams. Now we've then got these three values here, the lower quartile, the median, and the upper quartile. Now these are boundaries that cut off certain portions of the data. The median is the boundary between the top half of the data and the bottom half. Now in this case, because we've got 2,000 people, that's the top 1,000 people and the bottom 1,000 people. Imagine if we lined everybody up by how much they reduced their sugar intake by. The boundary between the 1,000th person and the person after them would be here at 1,177 grams. Sometimes that boundary will fall exactly on a person, sometimes it will fall between two people, depending on whether we've got an even or odd number of data points. We've then got the lower quartile here, which cuts off the bottom 500 people, the bottom quarter of our data. 500 people reduce their sugar intake by less than 911.5 grams. On the other hand, the upper quartile cuts off the top 500 people. So 500 people reduce their sugar intake by more than 1,411 grams. We'll talk more about box plots a bit later, but that's a nice introduction for now. Now, if you want to save this and download it as an image for your presentation, you'll have to create a free account, which we'll do later. Once you've done that, you can view the graphs you've created and download them as image files. Have a go at exercise 4 and then return to the video. Another powerful diagram for showing quantitative data is a histogram. A histogram is very similar to a bar chart, but used where we don't have continuous data. We actually group the data into sensible groups that don't need to be the same size, and because it's continuous, the bars don't have any gaps between them. Again, Excel doesn't have a particularly good way to build histograms, but Plotly does. First, let's head back to our data file, and we're going to copy the age column this time. So select the whole column, use Control and C, and then head back to Plotly. Clear out any graphs that you've got in there already. You can clear the values in there by clicking the cross and open up a new sheet. If we paste our age values in there, we're going to change the chart type to a histogram. If we then tell it that our values are in column A, immediately Plotly generates a histogram showing us the age of those who took part in sugar-free Feb. Plotly has automatically created age bands for us, but note that these bars all have the same width, and there are also lots of jumps in our data. And the really useful thing about histograms is that when we build them ourselves, we can customize this to suit our data and avoid these jumps and choose more appropriate group sizes. Now, I've made a separate optional video on how you could use Excel to create a custom histogram, and that one's a bit more aligned to how histograms are taught in A-level maths, and it uses the age bands that we made earlier, so feel free to check that out. In the meantime, have a go at exercise 5 using Plotly, and then return to the video. All of these diagrams are useful for giving a snapshot of one variable, and some of them can be adapted nicely to include another variable too, such as comparative bar charts and comparative box plots. In a later diagrams video, we'll look at that in greater detail. Make sure you've done all the exercises for this video, check your answers against the answers in the answer pack, and then move on to the next video.